and blessed unity with the L-O-V-E. Love is the solution, so set your love free with the L-O-V-E. Further evolution and blessed unity.
Good morning, self-lovers. Welcome back to the Self-Love Show. We are live Thursday morning at 10 a.m. So grateful to have you with us today for those viewers tuning in. And for those that are new here, welcome. And also want to let you know we have an amazing YouTube channel for you to tune into. And we're on all the platforms, podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify, you can find us there. So like, share, and subscribe. It really helps the algorithm and helps us get this message of self-love out to every person that needs it, right? Because it's a big umbrella and we serve everybody on the planet. Who doesn't need more self-love and self-nervous system regulation around our conversation today, right? Leading into that. So we have an amazing guest today. So grateful to have this beautiful human with us, Mike. And I'm going to just lean in and read his beautiful segment here, or bio. So self-love through nervous system regulation is an experience of deeply navigating the body through breathing, movement, and sensation to deepen self-awareness, improve well-being, and enrich quality of life. Mike Thomas, the everyday consciousness coach, has over 20 years of experience working with groups and individuals to optimize their wellness and quality of relationships through mindful movement and habit optimization. His trauma-informed approach maximizes results through working smarter, not harder, utilizing breathing, alignment principles, and nervous system regulation techniques to deepen awareness, reduce stress, and improve overall quality of life. Mike is the professional you seek out when you are ready to establish daily practices and that bring out the greatest version of you possible. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Welcome, Mike. We're so grateful to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be with you here today.
So I think it's really just a good show to have during the holidays because family stuff and it comes with, I mean, not just family stuff, but the holidays, the change in the weather, the loneliness comes up for a lot of people, and there's a lot that comes up during the period between gosh, I mean, even Halloween to New Year's, and then we're gonna be moving from New Year's even into what's that holiday? The February holiday. I always try to like it. Oh yeah,
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, that day. So it's just everything that feels lonely or nervous system deregulating on your own. It always just comes up during these time periods, and then it's really just like the gasoline about the family stuff that may not be worked out, or the personal stuff, or the relational stuff just comes up. And I'd love to launch into that because I mean we're hitting December 1st, and it's that crazy time period where people are introspective, and it's dark outside, and it's cold, and holidays, and breakups, and deaths, and all of the things. So can we start there?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So it seems to be the common experience to feel loneliness in some capacity during the holidays. And so this is a perfect time to discuss nervous system regulation and how we can map out what's going on in our behaviors and our sensations and our emotions and our relationships, what's going on under the surface. So what I like to do in order to get more resilience in my life, in order to manage grief or loneliness or anything that's coming up that may be challenging, as you mentioned earlier, Trish, how family can trigger that even more. There's nervous system information that will help you understand why that's the case. There are 3 basic zones of the autonomic nervous system, and in each of those zones, you might look at it like a traffic light. So at the bottom level of stress, it's like the green light. Go. We're able to do what we need to do in life, and we have resilience. We have highest cognitive capacity. We have empathy. We can connect to our own needs and other people's needs and their feelings. And we can be flexible, creative, spontaneous, plan ahead, control our impulses, and all the things that make us human happen at that lowest level of stress in the green light response, you might call it. It's the ventral vagal parasympathetic nervous system response. I'll just call it the green light response. And so when we're in that zone, things work best. We're able to get along, collaborate, and we can learn. Whereas when we move up into the next level of stress, what you might refer to as the yellow light, the sympathetic fight-flight response, as it's often known as, is what happens when our body perceives on an unconscious level through cues we get through our senses and the environment that we're in danger, that we need to fight or flee. And so that doesn't necessarily look like fighting and fleeing in an obvious way. It can show up like anxiety. It can show up like hypervigilance, constantly thinking about what could go wrong, feeling like you just can't slow down. When you're constantly busying yourself and you can't seem to just take a breath, chances are that's the flight response, and it happens mentally and emotionally and gets your body moving physically. When we go beyond that stress level, we're in the red light response, you might call it. It's the dorsal vagal parasympathetic branch, and it's connected to a similar function that we share with reptiles. It's this freeze, shutdown, collapse response. And that response in everyday life looks like things that we're familiar with, but we might not realize what's going on in the nervous system. So that shutdown response, the red light experience, could look like depression, could look like spacing out, worst case scenario, fainting or going into a feigned death response when we're actually in such danger that we couldn't possibly escape. That's why that happens. We go into those type of symptoms because the body thinks, well, if I flee or if I fight, it's not going to go well. If we were actually being threatened by a tiger, if somehow a tiger ended up in our sphere, we would not be able to run away. It's way too fast. We couldn't overpower it. There's no way that could work. So shutting down is adaptive because it keeps us in a space where we won't resist the experience. So if you get held up at gunpoint, or if you're doing public speaking and you notice that your mouth gets dry, or you just can't come up with whatever you had prepared, these are everyday experiences that are connected to that red light shutdown response. So when we experience what we experience in terms of stress in the holidays, we can start to look at the map of the nervous system in terms of this traffic light. We can get a sense of where we are in terms of stress response, and we can use specific tools to help us regulate the nervous system out of that threat, out of that danger experience, and back into safety, back into the best versions of ourselves. And there are a number of ways to do that, but depending on where you are on that zone of stress, what traffic light color, you might say, you're going to need to use different tools. For example, when you're at the top of the stress load, when you're in shutdown, that red light response, you don't want to calm down there. You'll stay stuck. That's something that is well known in the trauma-informed practitioner community. It looks like you're calm, but it's like the brake and the gas are pressed at the same time in terms of stress load is way up there, but it's so high that you shut down. And so it might look like, depression or procrastination, not wanting to move, but it could also be a lack of awareness that happens there. Whereas when we start to come down, when we do an activity or use a tool that allows us to come down the stress load and into that from the red to the yellow light experience, all of a sudden we're going to feel everything that we couldn't feel before. So it's going to feel like it's getting worse, but we're actually becoming aware of what was under the surface. Mm-hmm. Peter Levine is a famous traumatologist and created somatic experiencing. I would consider the gold standard as far as trauma therapies out there. And he talks about this concept of pain being sensation that is buried that we're not aware of, that is not in awareness, and so it ends up causing problems, because if you can't feel something, then you can't adjust appropriately, right? So wherever you are in that map of the nervous system, you have more of a sense of what you're able to do. And what I do to support people in this way is to help them with specific breathing techniques, navigating shifting attention. So looking at sensation, where you're focusing your attention, and movement. So there's a cool metaphor that I like to use to give a sense of how to navigate what I call the 3 vectors of awareness: breathing, movement, and sensation. Imagine that you're playing a musical instrument. Let's just use a violin as an example. Okay. And if you take the 3 vectors of awareness, breathing, movement, and sensation, let's imagine that the bow that's going across the strings and it's creating a vibration is the breathing. And when you're pressing your finger on the fretboard to change the frequency of that note, that's like movement. And the music that you hear, that you experience from that vibration of the breathing and the movement, creates the music of sensation. And so when you breathe, when you observe your breathing, it indicates what's going on in your nervous system. So if you're short, shallow breaths, maybe holding your breath, that's that red light response. If you're upper lung, mouth, hyperventilating, you're down in that yellow light response. And if your breath is deep and slow, perhaps using the nose instead of the mouth, because it's a little bit more calming when you do that, and your diaphragm drops, that's the green light response. And so depending on where you are on that map of the nervous system, you want to use a different tool so that you can continue to bring your stress load down more and more. And what that does is it changes what experiences are available. So going back to the stress over the holidays conversation, if you're experiencing depression, if you're feeling lonely, having a sense of abandonment is one way of putting it, a sense of no one's there for me, chances are you're in that red light response, and you need to wake up awareness. You need to wake up sensation gently. And so you can do that with a nice deep breath into the upper lungs and notice, hey, what's changing in my sensation? What's the music of sensation that's going on when I do that? So rather than just prescribing, okay, do this breathing pattern at this time, know what it's doing for you. When you use your upper lungs expanding with the mouth, that's going to stimulate. That's one way that you can bring yourself from the red light to the yellow light response and lower that stress load a little bit. So you can try that right now if you want. You can just take a moment, put your hand on your chest, and use your mouth to breathe in, and then exhale, let it go, and notice, what are the sensations you're feeling? Are there any changes in sensation in your head, your throat, often in your viscera, your chest, solar plexus, or belly? Then maybe take another one, and then let the air out comfortably. Has that changed sensation? As soon as you notice a change, that's enough. Just enough to what I call melt the iceberg of the unconscious. It's like these layers of not being aware of sensation. You become aware of them as you stimulate gently like that, finding how many breaths does it take you. It might be 5 today. It might be 1. You might have to do it for a while. But if you ignore your cues, you might hyperventilate, right? So it's really about listening to your body and going, what does this tool do for me? Okay, well, let me use it until I know my body has had enough and it's communicating with me. You've accomplished what you were trying to accomplish there. So that's one simple example.
I love that. You know, what I'm loving is that you bring in the sensation, and the thing about being human now is that there's this whole teaching, we'll call it, or an indoctrination around being disembodied. We're just here. We're just taking the brain boxes, and most of the time slowing down and being with the sensation of life is really kind of necessary to be able to move through. or move with it.
Mm.
I'm in a program called Moving with Life with Zuza Engler, who's a Gestalt therapist, and she does open floor and soul motion. So I just get to dance my feelings all the time. In fact, like after this, I'm going to finish a year-long program with her. And what I love that you did is something that I do in my practice too. And I love this piece, like love, 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 because it's so transformational, is to notice the sensation, to not judge it, but to notice what is actually happening within the animal, like your animal, within this body. So to acknowledge the emotion and the sensation, because that tells you so much about what's happening in your body, right? That right there gives you access to what it is that you want and need, right? So that's
Mm.
the foundation of, and I don't know, I can speak for me and some of my clients, is that what happened for me is like I was taught to be a people pleaser, not just because I'm socialized as female, but because, like there's other things in my life. And what I learned is to abandon my own needs for safety for other
Yeah.
people. So if I give up this here, my autonomy, then I can be safe. And I think that that's not an uncommon experience in our lifetime for a lot of people, especially people with this sort of like stuff going on. um, and what I'm noticing when we go into the bodied sensations, especially with my clients, is that it looks a little different when they're like, oh, now I can feel what I want and need. Now I can feel my emotions, and now I know what, oh, I'm running fear right now. I need to go self-source, or, oh, I need these types of things. And this is like one of the key hacks to nervous system regulation, is like literally listening to your body. Anyway, a little ranty. And
That's beautiful. There's a wealth of information that we could go into, depending on where you want to take this, with looking at how easily we give up our authenticity for the sake of attachment. Brings in the nervous system regulation component of attachment as a regulation theory, not just a personality trait. Like so often people look at attachment as oh, this I'm an anxious type, or I'm an avoidant type, or I'm a secure type. And there's this morality around it. It seems in the behavioral approach to it, when what's going on underneath the surface, as Gabor Mate says, it's not why the behavior that we should be asking, but why the pain underneath the behavior. What's going on in the nervous system that is resulting in this adaptive behavior that allows us to meet our need for attachment, which is a matter of survival. Our brains develop as a result of connecting to our caregivers and
yes,
having them attune with us emotionally through body language. And when we don't have that happen, as the famous Romanian orphanage study shows, those babies that didn't get picked up because there were too many of them, they died. They
yes.
quite literally depended on touch and exchange of body language with emotional attunement in order to regulate their nervous systems. And we're not just talking, I'm anxious or not, like actually having their bodies continue to function.
Can
So,
can we
yeah.
talk a little? I'm sorry to butt in, but can we talk a little bit about the word attunement? And I'd love to hear Dawn's perspective on attunement for a moment. Is like the emotional attunement. That's what you said, and this is what I often try to like bring in, but people are like, what is that? Like the concept of emotional attunement has this tendency to just pass people by, and I'm like, okay, how do you bring that in a way that's really relatable
Mm.
with your partner or with your children? Or go ahead.
Yeah. For me, emotional attunement is really about it's slowing down to actually acknowledge what you feel. You can't when you're caught in a heightened, in that red light state. there's often times where you're disengaged from your own body and sensations because you're literally so frozen, right? From whatever the perceived threat. And it could just be all internal material surfacing because of something someone said.
Mm.
Like the tone of voice that initiated the trigger, that really you have a lot of unresolved material. Like I love to say it in the unconscious, there's unresolved material having to do with other time spans, places, things that occurred, especially if you've experienced major trauma or abuse. It like I had reoccurring triggers constantly as I grew because I'm a child abuse survivor, and I had
Mhm.
to learn to regulate my nervous system in, especially in environments that I was around a lot of other people, and people would act fast or rash or loud noise or things, and it immediately scare me and trigger me into either yellow or red light state. And I love that sweet little, like, it's such a powerful way to look at it. It's a great, thank you for bringing that forward. And so for me, it's emotional attunement. It has to do with noticing you're triggered first and giving yourself permission to say, wow, I'm triggered. Okay, I can be more gentle here with everyone around me because I'm in a heightened triggered state. And what do I need to do in this moment? If I need to just go to the bathroom and be with myself for a moment, wash my hands, look at my eyes, do some breathing, be with myself to even attune to what is going on, and sometimes like the bathroom is the best, quickest. You're out in public, you don't have a private space to go to, either sit in your car or the bathroom. That's the number one, like, two places that I go to when I'm needing some, like, I just exit. I just say, you know what, I need to go to the bathroom. You don't need to explain when you need to go to the bathroom to anyone. And that is the best way to get out of a conversation when you're feeling really triggered and you're afraid that anger is going to come out, or frustration, or you're going to say the wrong thing, right? Because when you're in a triggered state, that often happens. And then funky conversation ensues from there, right? If you act on it in a triggered state. And we all know this because we're human, we've had this experience. So peel yourself away, go to the bathroom, look at your eyes, put your hand on your heart, and remind yourself that you are love's essence and it's okay you're triggered. And then
Mm.
from there, you can start to attune with your breath and with your consciousness, because you're more than your emotions, you're more than your body, you're more than your state of feeling. And it's really important to just allow yourself to attune. Like, I'm a powerful spiritual being having a human experience. Remind yourself of this and remind yourself to tune in and go, huh, what is this connected to? And
Mm.
boom, you'll have an information or a memory surface or a time period, because if you follow the energy line of it, you can close your eyes and ask yourself, your inner counselor, to actually show you, what is this really connected to? Because a lot of times it'll be an identical match to some other time, place, and period, something you experienced that was really hard, and it's buried, unresolved emotional material.
Mm. Powerful.
Yeah, so that's my explanation of attunement in the moment when you're in a triggered state, if that helps. Thank you.
Yeah. I love the slowing down that is implicit in the way you approach that. Emotional attunement starting with, what am I feeling, and accepting that and allowing that process to just be a physical sensory experience, an emotional experience, and without judgment, just be in that space, because you can't attune to someone else very easily when you're not attuned to yourself. It blocks out your capacity to be empathetic, just simply from a neurological perspective. The more we're aware of what's going on internally, the more capacity we can intuitively recognize the emotional experience of someone in front of us through their body language. There's far too much information to decode. It's consciously 126 bits per second that we take in through our senses, and 2 million unconsciously. That's where body language recognition, matching, mirroring, this rapport happens, or lack thereof. And if we're not slowing down and feeling into our own experience, empathy with another person is not only difficult, but maybe impossible in that moment, because in the survival state, which arises there, we're all of a sudden prioritizing biologically, unconsciously, our own self-preservation. Attunement and empathy is off the docket of something we can focus on. It's not priority, because of course we need to live to see another day in order to engage in those more emotionally attuned, sophisticated human experiences. So it is appropriate, but we don't have to stay there. We don't have to stay in a survival state. And once we can basically convince our bodies that we don't have to be in a survival state, all of a sudden the mind opens up. It's like, oh, wait, what are you experiencing? And it never would have occurred to you if you were stuck in that space of, well, freezing up the iceberg, you might call it, of the unconscious. So by melting it, by attuning to your own experience, I love that. Very well said, Don. I love that.
So I'll just share a little bit about my journey, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm loving what you're saying here. A few years ago, I got out of a really abusive relationship, and we'd opened our relationship up, and I hit some core traumas that I hadn't seen ever before. I was in like a 3-year CPTSD trigger and just couldn't regulate my nervous system. And at that time, I didn't have any skills, like I just got a Gestalt therapist, and Felipe was my coach at the moment. And I'm so grateful for him. Like, he really was like, he lovingly like checked me on my stuff, and I really needed that. And he also gave me some opportunities to look at some things, and to really start kind of like learning how to check my we'll call it disorganized attachment, because I, abusive, neglectful childhood, that sort of stuff going on. And one of the things that I started to really look at, again, I was kind of like walking around in the dark, like trying to feel around in the closet mostly. And I was like, what happens before it happens? Like, I started to look at that question, like, here's the trigger, but there's stuff that happens a long time before what happens before it happens. That also was really looking at what's happening inside my body. How am I just totally abandoning myself in that place? How am I not attuned to me? Like, where am I just like, da, 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 and not actually slowing down enough to acknowledge what's going on here? And then there's the question of, and I think about this all the time, and Dawn helped me learn this. What is the most self-honoring choice I can make? Which doesn't look like the most selfish choice. It's not like, on everybody else, but it's like, wait, I have my values of collaboration, of connection, but I also need to take care of my body and my brain and do what's generous to me. So that looks like, I have this thing called the triple win. I'll just explain it because it's come up in the last 4 conversations that I've had with my clients. It's just, so I'm constantly thinking about, well, okay, I'll tell you why I'm sharing this with you specifically, you all, in this context, is that, in my understanding of attachment theory and how I was kind of like, not because Felipe said it to me, because it's not it. It was more like, I need to take care of myself. And I had this like individual idea about it. And it occurred to me at some point that I was like, oh, I actually need community to heal this particular piece inside of me, because attachment wound, I can do my self-sourcing piece only to a certain point. And I actually need relationships like my relationship with Dawn, or my relationship with my best friends, or the people that I respect to transform these things. So when I was like, okay, well, what's good for me? This isn't the triple win. What's good for me? And I'm like, yeah, this is good for me, but it might not be good for you. Ooh, okay, I'm sure I can negotiate reality. I'm creative enough to negotiate reality with Dawn. I'm using Dawn. Like, okay, so if it's good for the both of us, but it's bad for everyone else, like everyone else in like either the community or the global relationship or maybe a polyamorous community, or so is it good for me? Is it good for Dawn? But it's bad for everyone else. Is there a way that we can get creative and find a way to negotiate what's good for everyone? And that right there shifted the way that I think about how to self-source. It shifted the way that I thought about my people pleasing in the past. It shifted the way that I actually move through the world. And now it feels like more alignment, right? So the self-attunement, slowing down enough to listen to what's actually going on here, being able to effectively communicate it with anybody who's involved or even close to me, like, hey, I'm feeling dysregulated and uncentered. I need some space. And I promise to come back. And I want to collaborate with you, was powerful in the transformation of my own nervous system regulation, is to be radically honest about what's going on and to think not just of what's good for me, but what's good for everyone in a way that wasn't self-abandoning. And I think that when we come into the holidays, it's like it really does kind of dysregulate people because our attachment stuff comes up, the dynamics come up, the way we feel about ourselves, or even the way that our communities or our families taught us how to think about ourselves. And I think like these tools are so crucial. Like there's already multiple tools in this show for anyone who's listening and any of the viewers who are watching live. These tools can really help you unlock your love for your family and for yourself. And rant.
I just want to share with our viewers really quickly because we are leading into the holiday season, and I just want to invite you into a when you're with somebody and you've had triggered states with them in the past, like the uncle that's just always saying rude things, or we've all had these character types or family members that are very opposite viewpoints than us, and they can say really demeaning or rude things. I'm just going to use that as an example. I don't have that person in my life, thankfully, but I'm just using that as an example. So I just want to invite you into a conversation of what if you could make an agreement with yourself to do your best to stay in neutral inside yourself, no matter what anybody else says, that you can be in neutrality inside of yourself and witness it. Witness it. What if that's all you had to do in the conversation, in the experience, in the room full of people, is actually show up in neutrality and look through the eyes of love? What if you could see that person as loving essence and yourself as loving essence? Look past the personality, the ego, the behaviors that are taking place, and look with the eyes of love and hear with the ear of your heart, so that you can attune and be attuned with yourself while you're experiencing. And it's okay, they have a radically different viewpoint than you. What if you could move into acceptance and know that it's okay? It's okay that they are the way they are. It's okay that they have unhealed parts. It's okay they may be operating out of a trigger or trauma or whatever it may be that's causing them to behave in a certain way. And you can regulate yourself regardless of what's going on outside.
It helps to get curious about another person's reality, regardless of whether they don't believe exactly what you believe, or maybe they have other ways to connect to the values that they have. You know what I find? You know what I find is that I'll have two people in conflict with different strategies to get their needs and values met. It's the same value and need, just wildly different strategies. And I'm like, oh, I mean, at some point we'll get to the point where we'll giggle about it. Like, do you see this? They're the same they're the same thing, different strategies. Do you get that? And they're like, oh my God, I want connection, but I'm going about it in this controlling way, and I'm going about it in this aggressive way, or whatever. It's just so sweet. So yes, I love that, Dawn. Coming in with neutrality and being curious. Oh. Love to your families and yourselves out there.
Wishing you the sweetest holiday season, and it can be light-filled regardless of the curriculum surfacing, that you can be in the love and be in the presence and be in the connection with yourself and others and enjoy this time.
Mm. Yeah, I love that concept of being in neutrality, and the paradox of it. I find in practice can show up when the temptation to people please shows up under the guise of being neutral, right? Right? Because it's easy to do. You know, we have this beautiful intention of stepping into neutrality, and that being the goal. How do we do that without abandoning ourselves? And a bit of a paradox that I find in practice when engaging in this and making sure to attune to the self as well as other people, and getting to that neutral space, is letting those non-neutral emotions be okay. To actually, as you said, Don, to accept the experience that's happening, which can include letting yourself not be so perfect in your own mind, right? Letting yourself go, I'm not neutral right now. How do I get there? Well, it definitely doesn't involve getting into denial about some of my anger that's going on right now, or that I feel sad, that I'm not as connected to this person as I would like to be. Or maybe I'm engaging in blame, like, oh, if they were just acting differently, then we would be connected just fine. Different strategies, like you were saying, Trish. And this experience of accepting what's going on, as you mentioned earlier, Don, this experience of attuning to your own experience, underneath the emotions. What's the sensory experience going on right now? And as you find a space of acknowledging it for what it is, the beautiful paradox in that experience is that things are always shifting and changing if we allow them. And so often the unconscious experience of trying to make our experience be uh, perfect in some way, right? So the beautiful intention of neutrality would be a great example of that. If I'm not feeling neutral and that's my intention, how do I get from A to B without denying myself, or without blaming the other person, for example? Just getting into the space of, well, okay, so what am I experiencing in my senses, and allow that to process naturally, which it will if we get out of our own way. And so we can get to this beautiful intention of attunement with ourselves, attunement with the other person in front of us, of getting to that place of true neutrality through making sure that we don't bypass the bodily experience where our nervous system is giving us messages like anger, for example. Your boundaries are not being upheld. And so if you're experiencing anger, that's a great message. Cool. So I can accept that and go, well, what's that boundary I'm not connecting to? I didn't even know there was a boundary being breached. What could it be? I'm feeling anger, so it must be somewhere. And start to get curious about that. And so we can find that true neutrality where we're in this space of respecting the needs that we both have, probably share in that moment of connection, first of all. That's a universal human need. And why am I attached to this strategy? Why are you attached to that strategy? Well, it's that baggage in the background, unconsciously, right? And if we can just attune to how the body is revealing it with our sensations, what a beautiful opportunity to allow a complete attunement to both self and then other, and then create, as Dr. Dan Siegel describes, not just the me, not just the we, but the me plus the we being the MWE, the we, the relational space that we experience together when we're finally in connection with our own needs and the other person's needs, and we're clear on that. And as you were mentioning in that example, Trish, you just start to giggle about it when we realize we were really after the same thing. We just had different strategies because we're different human beings. Surprise, surprise, we are going to have different strategies.
Mike, would you lead us in a short, sort of embodied, connective piece of like what happens when you're triggered? Like how, because people are going to be triggered over there, well, forever. Like this is just how it's going to be. And I mean, hopefully not forever, but it will just happen consistently, and we get to practice. So what is a quick self-love, embodied place to come back into center especially in places of high trigger or in confusion or in, I don't know what to do next.
So I'm going to give you a brief explanation of what the tool is before we go into it. I find that it's a lot more effective if you know what the tool is doing for you, so that you can feel the experience and you can adjust based on how you need it in the moment. Your body will communicate with you. So I'm going to use a breathing technique that is mentioned on the Huberman lab by Dr. Andrew Huberman from Stanford. It's called the physiological sigh. And remembering the red, yellow, and green light responses in the interest of melting the layers of the unconscious iceberg, you might call it, from the red response, where we're dissociated, not connected to ourselves, and perhaps shut down in some way. We need to wake up that awareness. And so you start with using your nose, breathing deeply as you can, and then a little deeper, expanding the lungs, upper chest lifting, lower ribs widening, however you can deepen that breath. So it's a double inhale, as deep as you can, and then a little deeper, and then a long exhale through the mouth. I'm going to do that 4 times, and I'll take you through it in a moment. And what that does is it wakes up sensation, and then the long exhale calms the nervous system to bring you first from that inhale, from the red into the yellow. You feel more, and that long exhale brings you down into the green. And every time you do that physiological sigh breath pattern, it will bring you a little bit lower wherever you are on that map of the stress response experience. So we're going to do 4 of those, and then we're going to go into feeling the sensations of the body, starting with the feet. We're going to move our way up into the hands, the arms, the head, the shoulders, and so on. So let's go ahead and together do 4 physiological sighs, starting with a double inhale, long, slow exhale. However long you do it, it's okay not to do it in time with me. Listen to your body. Double inhale, slow, long exhale through the mouth. Long as you can comfortably do it. Let's do 2 more. And you can even add noise to your exhale, or stimulating your vagus nerve with the vibration. Let's do 1 more. Double inhale through the nose. Long exhale. And just start to notice the sensations in your body, starting with your feet. Are your feet flat on the ground? If not, it can be helpful to flatten them on the ground, whether you're sitting or standing. And either shift your weight forward and back if you're standing, or if you're sitting, push them into the ground a little bit and feel the sensations of your feet. Meanwhile, you're just allowing your breath to flow naturally. And as you're feeling your feet, you might notice that one foot is cooler than the other, or perhaps it's warmer than the other. And once you establish the difference in sensation in your feet, whether it's temperature, maybe there's more weight on the fronts of your feet, the backs, more on the left or the right, notice how much you experience that sensation. So if it's warmth in your right foot, let's say, is it a 10, very warm, or is it 1, not very warm? Or if it's cool, very cool is 10, and 1 is not very cool. So rate the sensations in your feet, whatever you notice, on a scale of 1 to 10. And now shine the flashlight of awareness from your feet up into your calves and shins, your lower legs to your knees, noticing any sensations there, checking in, seeing that your breath is flowing, and up into your thighs, into your hips. If you're seated, go ahead and notice the weight on your hips, your gluteal muscles or your sit bones, and up into your lower back and your belly. Noticing any movement. You might even put 1 hand on the belly, 1 on the chest. Movement of your breath as you shift the flashlight of attention up your torso, into your ribs, your chest, and your shoulder blades, into your neck and shoulders, down your arms to your elbows. Shifting attention down your elbows to your wrists and to the ends of your fingers. You might even move your fingers and rub them and feel the sensations there. You might notice the sensations now in your face, in the different parts you can touch it or just notice it. In your scalp, internally, in your skull, deep in your throat, deep in the bones of your shoulders and arms to your fingertips, internally in your heart, internally feeling where your lungs are moving, any sensations there, down into your viscera of your stomach, your liver, your intestines, all the way down into your genitals, your hips, the bones going down your thighs all the way to your knees, and back down all the way to your feet, internally sensing what's going on inside the body. And let's just take a moment to notice what your breath is doing now. Is the inhale longer or the exhale? What sensations do you notice in your feet? How about behind your eyes, the muscles of your eyes? Anywhere you want to shift your attention, let's now focus in on the environment around you. You might even turn your head and notice what are the different objects in the room now outside of you. Noticing with your eyes the colors, shapes, textures, distances between you and different objects. The sound of your breathing or of my voice, sounds inside the room, outside of the room. The sense of touch on your skin, the clothing on your skin, or the temperature of the air. Noticing the taste on your tongue, if you have a taste that you notice, or maybe just that your tongue is either salivating or dry or somewhere in between. And how about your sense of smell? What odors do you notice? One odor or maybe a number of them. And as you breathe and notice those odors, notice the flow of breath now. You might have a deeper sense of where the breath is flowing. Maybe something is relaxed in you as you notice the breath flow. Is your chest moving more easily? Is your belly expanding and going back in? Is there movement in your back as you're breathing? Where are your feet now? Are there different sensations now in your feet? As we come back into our experience here now outside of this mindfulness exercise, just notice how you feel now that you've been focusing on your sensations. Bringing this exercise now to a close, what happens when you get out of your head thinking about what could happen in the future or what's happened in the past to the present moment in the sensations of your body? What happens is it shifts your brain networks by focusing in this way on your sensations from the centralized networks to the lateralized networks, and it lowers your stress load. You're then melting the layers of the iceberg of your unconscious, becoming more aware of what your body's telling you. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? If your emotions are dysregulated, sometimes we don't even know if we're hungry or not. We might be thirsty and not realize it, and we eat emotionally. Doing an exercise like we just did here allows you to attune to your body. What are your needs? What do you need to connect to allow your body to relax, to energize? Or maybe you need to go to sleep. Maybe you need to take a nap. But whatever your needs are, as you go through an exercise like we just did, attuning to your breath, movement, not just of your body, but of your attention, that flashlight of attention, and noticing the waves of sensation, the layers of sensation that open up one layer at a time. So that brings this exercise to a close here. And notice what you're feeling right now.
Thank you. I feel very in my skin, like in touch with the sensation in my shoulder and the coldness of my toes. Should have wore socks. uh, I just really adore embodiment practices because the place of presence is so here. And that's where I can make really honest and authentic and choices living from and in my integrity, while being protective of my peace and your peace. And it's, a good hack for the what's it called? Adrenaline cortisol button. It's a good way to get out of that.
For sure. Cold showers are a great way to do that.
Oh, you.
I know not everybody likes that. And I don't either, but it feels amazing afterwards.
I like
And
shaking more than I like the cold shower. The cold, being cold is actually a trigger or a response in my trigger. So oftentimes it can be one of the things that keeps me in the trigger.
that would be a very bad practice for you then.
Who doesn't want more nervous system regulation and more lowering the stress load? Like, thank you for delivering that beautiful, beautiful exercise that's tangible, right? When you feel it, you remember to go back and rewatch the show or re-listen to the show.
Or share it with a friend.
Yeah, and share it with friends for the holidays. Who isn't? This is so useful. So I really, really greatly appreciate you sharing that medicine. Thank you.
How do we find you?
So you can find me in a number of places. I'm most active on Facebook, and I have a Facebook group called the HFL stands for Holistic Fitness Lifestyle, HFL 30-Day Fitness Habit Reboot. It's a free community where we come together and share tools about regulating the nervous system to enhance fitness of the body, of the emotions, of the mind, of connection to spirit, and of our relationships. And so it does lead to a program, an official program, 30-day program that will start on January 1st. And there's plenty of free content there in the meantime, as well as some classes that will happen every week, teaching you deeper and deeper tools, like the one that we just went over, the mindfulness movement experience we just did. You can also find me on YouTube. The Holistic Fitness Lifestyle is the name of the channel. You can find me at www.holisticfitnesslifestyle.com. My email is holisticfitnesslifestyle@gmail.com. And you can just say, "Hey, Mike," out your window, and I might take in that and notice you from there.
Hey, Mike! You shine like a light up in the sky, and
My own bat signal.
yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike, for being present with us today and giving these tools. And I just really appreciate your body of work and what you bring forward. It's beautiful, and you're impacting so many people's lives, and it's really beautiful to see. So keep going. It's great. I know that more people want nervous system regulation. It's so important. It's so important because it helps us discover who we are and what we really need. Yeah.
I'm so grateful to be on this show. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. And for those viewers that are, women that are wanting to reclaim their trust, I have a free Facebook group that I would love to invite you into. This is a place that's just a safe sanctuary for women to discover more of, where they've disconnected from their own experience of trust and how to reclaim that. And through our challenging circumstances that arise in relationships and things that occur in our lives, sometimes we can let go of the perception that we have lost our trust or it's been broken. And so this is a place where you can just come and reclaim that and really rediscover yourself in a new way and be in a group of beautiful women. There's lots of freebies and tools in there. It's just an amazing Facebook group full of just great gems. And I often go live and do different things and preparing in the new year to launch again for a beautiful program that I offer called Unleash Your Sovereign Queen. And so, yeah, we would just love to have you. This is a place to really discover that you embody trust.
I love this. And if you haven't, go find some people who walked through her program. stunning and transformational.
Thank you.
I love you, and it was amazing. I'd also like to share something that I have a self-secure program called Loving Your Inner Securities and Inner Insecurities and Cultivating Self-Reliance. And that's also happening in the new year. The foundation of self-sourcing will really transform what your world looks like. And maybe I can talk some teachers into coming on for just a brief moment. So check out the self-secure. And I would love to say a deep, deep gratitude for Sign Network for sharing us out on, I don't know, like a zillion different pages, like almost 60 pages today. For Roy and Russell, our beautiful and amazing assistants that make everything in the background possible. We are live on KPFZ 88.1 in Lakeport and Mendocino counties. We are like all the Spotify and all of the things that are happening. Thank you, Roy and Russell, for just making it possible to live life. And thank you to Scott Thomas, Love Coach Academy, and Global Peace Tribe for being just amazing and always supporting our work, as well as Relation Flicks, right? Relation Flicks for hosting Mike Thomas and my work in the world. So thank you all for your time and your attention. And Mike, thank you for the years of study and dedication to not only your nervous system, but to everybody else's around you. You're changing the world, man.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Don, for being the best of the besties.
And thank you for being the best of the best. And we just wish everyone a warm, amazing month. And, may this holiday season be cozy, uplifting, elevating, and just love-filled.
Well, we will catch you next week.
Yes.
Bye, y'all.